Hate is a very strong word, but when it comes to CM Punk, the hatred for the WWE runs deep. There are plenty of examples of him being furious at Vince McMahon, at Triple H, at individual wrestlers, and laying into people either in his own company, in other companies, or the other company when it was his own company. Punk's return was so shocking because it ignores his own history, his own experiences, and in many ways, the many quotes which seriously bring into question his current employment. Seth Rollins may have called him a hypocrite. Let's actually find out if that's true, because CM Punk laid down a challenge to journalists, and I'm here to answer it. At the AEW All Out Media Scrum, now popularly known as Brawl Out because of what CM Punk would do shortly afterwards, he said if you fancy yourself a journalist, even if it's just for the silly world of professional wrestling, and you have journalistic integrity, people who report things, mostly that are bull and slanderous lies about myself, if you're friends with somebody, if you're not friends with him, I apologise, but you should probably disclose who you're friends with. Just a warning ahead of time, there's going to be a lot of swear words on my screen for this one. Now, at the time, he was talking about his perceived interpretation of the friendship between Dave Meltzer and Hangman Page. This has never been confirmed, so the fact that the Young Bucks use a lot of Dave Meltzer-themed moves suggests there is at least some sort of respect there. That said, it raises a fair question about slanderous lies. Let's talk a little bit about who CM Punk is and how we know about his hatred for the WWE, the company he just returned to. Sportster starts us off right with a clear quote from CM Punk telling you everything you need to know about who he believes himself to be. And I quote, "I pride myself on being a jerk because I'm brutally honest all the time. This is someone who does not care about anything else that's going on. He's a jerk and he's okay with it." Let's go back a little bit before WWE to make it clear who CM Punk at least believes he is and who he shows himself to be. Let's go to a video from his time in Ring of Honor when he was interviewed alongside Colt Cabana. This was in 2005, a long time ago. There is no question that he's changed considerably since then. However, as with all things, it informs you as to his history. Like most women in the business are rats. You know, I mean, that's a hard fact of life that you eventually realise, and it was like she got in the business. And at the time she was like, oh, I want to be a wrestler and I want to train. I never saw her get in the ring. It just never happened. When we did get in the ring, all it took was a good forearm shot and then that was it. She was done. So we always kind of kept her in check. She would be bikini girl. She'd wear a bikini and walk around the ring. This was a long time ago when women's wrestling wasn't really a thing, and I don't think you're able to marry a women's wrestler if you have so little respect for women's wrestling at the time of actually meeting her. What I will say though is this says a lot about the way CM Punk presents himself. While he may not hold these views anymore, and there's plentiful evidence that he does not, what it does say is that he's not afraid to just say what he's thinking and what he's feeling at the time. This is going to be very important going forwards talking about CM Punk. Let's fast forward to the meat of the matter, 2014, when he left the WWE, how this happened, where the hatred comes from, before we get into where he is now in his career as well. The best source we have when it comes to CM Punk is the Colt Cabana podcast interview from shortly afterwards. When we're talking about this 2014 walking out that he did just after the 2014 Royal Rumble being eliminated by Kane, there is plenty of detail in that. I've read through an entire transcript, but it does seem best to go through a couple of summaries instead of spending 2 hours listing it here. To quote CM Punk as regards the initial retirement, "I was sick and hurt and burnt out and I walked, and I can do that because I'm an independent contractor." He spoke at length about having a concussion received in the Royal Rumble match, as well as a staph infection via the PW Torch shortly lower. When Punk told a doctor that he wrestled with a staph infection for 3 months, Punk said the doctor told him, "You should be dead, you could have died." So according to CM Punk, wrestling for the WWE nearly killed him. We go now to Fightful, talking about an individual time when Punk was injured and working on commentary in the WWE. "I get home, Vince calls and it's, heard you don't need surgery, that's great, I'm sending you a plane ticket, we're going to have you do commentary." This is pretty standard in WWE. If someone's injured, they'll try and find another way to keep them on TV and keep them essentially relevant. "I was bummed because I didn't want to fly. First night in commentary, Vince started yelling in my headset. I elbowed Lawler, wrote a note to him that said, 'Which is the volume button?' He pointed to it and I turned it all the way down. When he took the headsets off after the show, I was like, 'Did you not know you can do that?' He goes, 'I knew you could do that, but we're going to get yelled at.' Vince never said anything." I used to have moments like that where he would be giving me in my ear and I would hear it, but I wouldn't sell it to the camera. He goes, "Did you hear me?" I just stare at the camera like, yes, I heard you. I found it difficult trying to do a job, watching the show and call what is going on. If you're yelling at me, it's not helping, so I just turned him off. I don't know why more people don't do that. Of course, based on reports recently, actually turning off Vince McMahon is probably one of the worst things you can do for your career. For more quotes from this podcast, we go to Bleacher Report. One of the major talking points in the conversation was Punk addressing WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon's apology for sending him his severance papers on his wedding day. McMahon addressed Punk's situation after Monday's Raw on Stone Cold Steve Austin's live podcast and claimed that he had no intent to send termination papers on his wedding day, blaming a lack of communications between the talent relations and legal departments. Telling how often I have to say this, but that talent relations department no longer exists. Punk claimed that he believes officials at WWE knew what they were doing and conscientiously fired him on that specific day. He claimed that he sent Triple H a text message 2 days before his wedding stating that the two could talk when he returned from his honeymoon. He also says his wife, former Divas champion AJ Lee, took time off from work at the WWE for her wedding and subsequent honeymoon, indicating there were at least a few officials within talent relations who knew it was Punk's wedding day. Ironically, after receiving many messages following the first interview, Punk rebuts fellow wrestler Chris Jericho's claim that Punk will likely return to the company eventually. Chris Jericho, of course, has now been proven right 10 years later. In his comments, Punk expresses how much he was offended by the way the company handled his exit and claimed he and Jericho were not in the same situation. Going into more detail via the Washington Post, WWE purposefully and maliciously tried to ruin a day that is supposed to be special, Punk said. I don't want to hear that the lawyers didn't talk to talent relations. I talked to Hunter, a top-level WWE executive and wrestler who goes by the ring name Triple H, on the 11th. On the 13th, overnight, I got a document from FedEx that was dated the 12th. Punk added, if the apology was sincere, you wouldn't use it as a publicity stunt on Austin's podcast. You have my phone number, you have my address, you could text, you could call, you could show up when you're a 10-minute drive from my house and apologize to me like a man. I would imagine a large part of the recent contract negotiations were Triple H and possibly even Vince McMahon apologizing. CM Punk continues to be a perfect example of art imitating life because there are plenty of WWE segments live in that ring where people have apologized to him, and that must have been repeated to get to where we are today. WrestleTalk have put together an entire list, more than 20 occasions when CM Punk went on the attack against WWE. I've just picked out one here. 10 months after Punk walked out of WWE, CM Punk shot on everyone. He accused The Shield of not asking enough questions, while also claiming to have invented them. Alleged Ryback tried to shorten his life. He claimed WWE Doctor Chris Amann failed to treat Punk's staph infection, leading to a lawsuit that would destroy Punk's friendship with Cabana, and that Triple H and Vince McMahon conspired to fire him on his wedding day. He alleged working at WWE was seriously damaging his health, and that he was resentful he wasn't given the same movie, sponsorship, and WrestleMania main event opportunities as part-time stars like The Rock and Brock Lesnar. Might as well take this moment to reference the report about CM Punk wanting a WrestleMania main event. He has returned at Survivor Series and looks set to wrestle against Seth Rollins at night 1 of WrestleMania. Once again, he will be overshadowed by the actual main event of WrestleMania, part-timer Roman Reigns, who has main evented WrestleManias 31, 32, 33, 34, 37, 38, 39, and will soon be main eventing 40. I'd love to be able to say that Punk hated the WWE, but things have changed enough that it's now no longer recognisable, but a lot of the grievances that he had are very much still in play. There are conflicting reports about the status of Dr. Chris Amann, the physician who worked directly with CM Punk during this time. Peter Insider are reporting Amann gave notice some time ago and officially retired from his position with WWE this month. That was in September 2022. However, there are conflicting reports on this. A good old-fashioned Google search for does Dr. Chris Amann still work for the WWE? AI on Google has pulled up Ringside News stating the defamation lawsuit claimed these statements had damaged Dr. Amann's reputation. It was reported last year Dr. Chris Amann had retired from WWE. It doesn't seem this is the case because he's still around and with the company. During the Fightful Q&A, Sean Sapp noted Chris Amann is still with WWE. That was 13 hours ago. The report from Peter Insider was a year ago, so this seems at least more up-to-date information. What this means is a large part of the grievances that CM Punk had and reasons for his issues with the WWE haven't actually changed. Triple H, a person he had serious problems with, is still there. Let's talk more about that. CM Punk turned down the opportunity to wrestle against Triple H at WrestleMania, a match that would eventually be taken by double duty from Daniel Bryan. Now, Triple H had a very strong reaction to the Colt Cabana podcast. To no one's surprise, the McMahons are not pleased about it. According to the report, Vince McMahon is upset but not fuming, and is simply upset that the whole thing happened. Triple H, on the other hand, is furious. Brian Alvarez noted Triple H wants to kill Punk was the exact text message. Hunter and Stephanie have such an abject hatred for CM Punk. Triple H is the one, of course, who signed CM Punk to a brand new WWE contract about 2 weeks ago. Triple H was the driving force behind this, so the anger must have dissipated. Stephanie McMahon was also there at Survivor Series when CM Punk was. So, wrestling world is one of those where bygones will be bygones, but has the bygones been bygones for CM Punk? Would he have rejoined WWE if not for the abject failure that came to be his time in AEW? The tirade at AEW All Out was the beginning of the end for Punk. Punk responded after he returned from his injury by cutting an unplanned promo, challenging Page to an immediate rematch. This is Hangman Page. When Page didn't come out, Punk said, "That's not cowboy, that's coward." At that point, there were no plans for a Page versus Punk match, and no plans on the show for Page to appear and fight Punk. It reportedly embarrassed Page and made him look bad that Punk extended an open challenge that Page couldn't answer. This is via The Ringer. Punk also verbally attacked Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks during his Sunday comments. Now it's 2022, I haven't been friends with this guy since at least 2014, late 2013, and the fact that I have to sit up here because we have irresponsible people who call themselves EVPs, yet they couldn't manage a target, they spread lies and bull, and put into the media that I got somebody fired when I have all to do with him. I want nothing to do with him, I do not care where he works, or where he doesn't work, where he eats, where he sleeps. The fact that I have to get up here and do this in 2020 is embarrassing. The mention of EVPs refers to the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, whom he seems to blame for spreading the rumours about his trying to get Cabana fired. There were also rumblings about the impetus for Cody Rhodes' departure to WWE, which was at least partially caused by anger about Punk being slotted above him. Rhodes is part of the elite group that helped found WWE. To be clear, I've already covered that on last week's WTF Wrestling about Cody Rhodes defecting to WWE. All evidence suggests that Punk and Cody are cool now. Less cool with him, Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, both members of The Shield that were referenced in that Colt Cabana podcast. That's alongside Dean Ambrose in WWE, now Jon Moxley in AEW, that CM Punk worked with for the AEW Championship. Seth Rollins while speaking to journalist Nick Hausman. Now many of you will be familiar with the name Nick Hausman when it comes to CM Punk. Philly Phil, stay away, you cancer, get away from me forever. I don't like Phil. He's a jerk. Did we just figure that out? Everybody in the room is like, did he say that? Yeah, he's a jerk. Come on, we figured it out over there, we knew it over here. I don't want him back, go do something else, bye-bye, see you later. This is the same Nick Hausman who's been asking every single person he can about CM Punk for about a year now, and it's the same Seth Rollins who looks set to be wrestling CM Punk in the weeks to come, possibly for a championship at WrestleMania. The heat is there, the hatred is there. I also find it likely that this didn't offend CM Punk because CM Punk has said himself he's a jerk and he's proud of that fact. So in many ways, Seth Rollins was probably complimenting him. We go then to Roman Reigns. So I answered a question similar to this a while ago and it falls back to what our audience wants to see. If our audience wanted to see it and they were clamouring for it, couldn't shut up about it and all the stars aligned, as a businessman and as a performer who is trying to seek out the very best for the audience and try to captivate, I wouldn't say no. So he's open to wrestling Punk. But I mean, on a personal level, it doesn't do anything for me. That's not going to elevate me at all. He's older now, I haven't really seen a full match, I've seen a clip or two, and to me, a step or two has been lost. Then also he got his ass whooped in the UFC. I don't think anybody really believes someone 200 pounds soaking wet with no explosive bone in their body could ever really do anything to me. I'm 6'3", 265 pounds, a legitimate athlete who can throw some weight around and has been on the gridiron at the highest level. I mean, when it comes down to it, I'll throw him and pretty much the rest of the roster out the club, no problem. They're just little brothers, you know? The particularly hilarious part here is that Roman Reigns is talking about CM Punk the same way that CM Punk used to talk about Triple H. Triple H was old. It didn't do anything for Punk to wrestle him at WrestleMania. Roman Reigns now saying much the same about CM Punk. Funny how the world changes. I've also pulled a quote here via Sportskeeda from CM Punk about Vince McMahon, and it just, knowing what we know now, it reads differently. You know, there's one other thing I don't do, Vince. I don't have dirty, unprotected sex with some money-grubbing skank who eventually files a paternity suit against me, which gets me kicked out of my own house and leaves me nothing but a living, breathing national disgrace. This was part of a storyline. That was to Vince when he said there was no way Punk could be his illegitimate son in 2007. But I just want to be clear, knowing what we know now, that raises some serious question marks for me. One more thing definitely worth the mentioning is that the WWE is still not exactly an exemplary company themselves, and does often fly in the face of the values that CM Punk currently represents. He has himself been very open about this, reading, and I quote, "Go suck a blood money covered in Saudi Arabia, you dork." This was a response to The Miz, as regards a Saudi Arabia deal that CM Punk may now have to obey and take part in. Punk may take pride in being a jerk, but he doesn't suffer the consequences of it. Colt Cabana was interviewed, and this is on 411 Mania, basically explaining the results of CM Punk's attacks on him. On people taking shots at him on Twitter. "My Twitter has been a wild show, and it's crazy how some people feel that their tweets towards you are like an acceptable move in life, like you're allowed to do that. But I've also been really good about not letting that affect me, and also realizing that whoever's tweeting this, you're not a real human being. I guess you have a lot of work to do." Maybe you got a better idea of what I'm going through and that I'm going through it, and also maybe when I'm at a convention, you know, there's certain stuff you don't want to bring up. I think I've said that forever. You know, I always love talking to people, and I love talking wrestling. I love talking shop. But then once you bring up some stuff that's been traumatic for me over years, I shut down, and then you read on a message board somewhere that Colt said, "It is rare, and I'd love if you can give me examples here, that CM Punk actually suffers consequences for his actions and for his attacks. Colt Cabana, however, has certainly suffered as a result of it." Fast forwarding to the modern day, we are starting to see a lot more humility, though, from this CM Punk, suggesting that maybe we are getting something different in WWE. To quote, "The first thing I said to Tony," this is Tony Khan, "when I sat down with him and spoke to him after it," this being Brawl Out, says, "Man, I'm really sorry I put you in that position. I apologise for the scrum, but when you watch that scrum, you're looking at a very, very frustrated guy who had told people. That's not the first time he heard all that. It's not the first time lawyers were told all that, and I was just looking for something to be done and nothing got done. So if you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself. And I just didn't approach it in the right manner, but tension was high. I was very, very pissed. I pretty much knew that I had just injured myself again. I was hurt and I was disappointed. Yeah, it's very easy for me to say I regret that, and I handled it the wrong way, 100%. This is an interesting apology. He essentially says, I handled that wrong, but also I was right. I was wrong to do that, but it was the right thing to do. It's a very, very backwards piece of text. While the WWE may have forgiven Punk, it doesn't seem that everybody has. Seth Rollins, in a promo that is actually promoted by WWE, suggesting that this is just storyline, says, "Get it out of your system, because I'll tell you what, I don't want to spend one more second, one more ounce of energy on that hypocrite. Instead of talking about someone who doesn't matter at all, why don't we talk about the thing that matters the most? Why don't we talk about the title that for the last 6 months I built into the most important championship in this entire industry?" Seth knows full well that is the secondary title in the WWE, and considering how Gunter has been used, maybe even the third. What he is trying to do is build that championship's credibility, and CM Punk versus Seth Rollins is certainly the easiest way to do that. Bygones may be bygones, all may be forgiven, but a lot has not changed in WWE since CM Punk left. The man is a proven flight risk, and his time in AEW came to an abrupt end. It is certainly not impossible that that happens again for the WWE. We cross our fingers, and we hope to see good things come next. Hit subscribe for more, and I'll see you soon.